Welcome to Conspiracist. Today we're diving into a pretty complex hypothesis. The idea that governments might have intentionally concealed evidence about experiments aimed at manipulating brainwaves.
It's definitely a topic that touches on a lot of different areas.
Yeah, we've got quite a range of sources here. Scientific papers, some historical documents, public opinion analysis. Our goal is really to objectively look at the information available, evaluate the reasoning behind these claims.
Okay, so where do we start? Maybe with why people might even suspect this.
That seems like a good place. There's actually research showing significant public concern about psychological manipulation in general.
Ah, right. I recall seeing that. Studies finding people worry about being influenced, maybe unconsciously, by campaigns, researchers, even social media.
Exactly. So there's this sort of pre-existing anxiety about hidden influence. It's not just about brainwaves specifically, but a broader concern.
And that might make people more receptive to ideas about manipulation, even if the evidence is shaky.
Potentially. Like the belief in subliminal messaging affecting purchases, something largely debunked by science. But the idea persists. It shows this underlying worry about unseen control.
Okay, so that sets the stage. People are worried about manipulation. How does that connect to tapping into brainwaves?
Well, that phrase itself came up in online discussions, like on neuroscience forums.
Right. And what was the general feeling there? Among neuroscientists, I mean.
A lot of skepticism, actually, especially towards technologies claiming they can just magically change your brain state with, say, sound patterns or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right from a scientific perspective. It's usually not that simple.
And someone made a pretty interesting point in that discussion, too.
Oh, what was that?
That if a technology really worked effectively, like truly manipulated brain states reliably, wouldn't it be everywhere by now?
Ah, the ubiquity test. Like smartphones or GPS. If it works and is useful, it tends to spread rapidly.
Exactly. But these purported brainwave manipulation gadgets often stay pretty niche, kind of on the fringes, which might suggest they aren't quite delivering on the big claims.
That's a fair point. Though absence of ubiquity isn't absolute proof against something existing covertly, perhaps, but it does raise questions about effectiveness.
True. It doesn't rule out concealment, but it casts doubt on the efficacy of the publicly known versions.
Okay, so let's move from public perception and online skepticism to the actual scientific research. What about things like binaural beats?
Right, binaural beats. There was a systematic review on that. The idea is you place slightly different sound frequencies into each ear.
And then the brain supposedly perceives a third frequency, the difference between the two. And that frequency is meant to influence your brain waves, right? Entrainment, they call it.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
But what did the review find? Did it confirm this works?
Well, that's where it gets complicated. The review highlighted a lot of inconsistency across the studies.
Inconsistency how?
Methodological heterogeneity, basically. Different studies use different sample sizes, different frequencies, different lengths of exposure, different ways of measuring brain waves with EEG.
So it's hard to compare results if everyone's doing the experiment differently.
Precisely. It makes it really difficult to say definitively, yes, binaural beats reliably entrain brainwaves to a specific state. The results are just too varied, possibly because the methods are too varied.
Okay, so binaural beats.
Mm-hmm.
The jury seems to be out, or at least the evidence is messy.
Yeah.
What about more direct methods, like transcranial neuromodulation?
Right, things like HD, TDCS, high-definition transcranial direct current stimulation. That's quite different.
How so?
That involves applying weak electrical currents directly to the scalp. It's a much more targeted intervention trying to modulate brain activity in specific regions.
So not just passive listening, but an active physical stimulation.
Exactly. And research like the Brainwave Net study focuses on analyzing the effects of this stimulation, how brain activity patterns change before and after. They're trying to understand the impact.
Which is still about understanding brain responses, not necessarily covert manipulation in the way the hypothesis suggests, but it shows we can influence brain activity externally.
Yes, it demonstrates that principle, albeit in a controlled, therapeutic, or research context. It's a tool being developed.
This seems like a good point to bring in the historical angle, because the idea of government interest in mind influence isn't entirely new, is it?
Not at all. The CIA's MKultura program is probably the most well-known example.
What exactly was MKultura about, based on the documents we have?
Well, the records show a clear effort by the CIA, starting back in the 50s, to find ways to control behavior and mental states. They were looking into drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological techniques.
For what purpose?
The documents mention things like special interrogations, breaking down resistance, and even potential offensive uses manipulating individuals, perhaps.
And this wasn't just theoretical research.
Oh no, they conducted experiments, some quite disturbing ones.
Like what?
Well, there are records of them using agents, like George Hunter White, to secretly dose unsuspecting people with LSD in CIA safe houses to see what happened.
Unsuspecting people.
Yeah.
Without their consent.
Yes, unwitting subjects. And there were the notorious experiments Dr. Cameron conducted on psychiatric patients in Canada, funded as part of MKUltra, using extreme methods like drug-induced comas and electroshock therapy.
That sounds deeply unethical.
It was, and it's been widely condemned since. It also shows the lengths they were willing to go to in exploring these possibilities.
Was this just rogue researchers, or was there institutional backing?
There was definitely institutional backing and funding. The CIA funded researchers like Dr. Geschichter, even helping set up a hospital safe house at Georgetown University Hospital, specifically for accessing human subjects for experiments.
So a clear historical precedent for government interest and action in this area, even if the methods were crude or ethically fraught compared to modern neurotech.
A very clear precedent. Documents show early interest, setting up interrogation teams using drugs and hypnosis back in 1950, discussing mind control with foreign intelligence in 1951.
And Project Artichoke.
Yes, that involved using drugs and hypnosis for interrogations too. A 1952 report even claimed it was successful on suspected Soviet agents.
They also tested drugs like LSD on federal prisoners.
Correct. A 1956 memo approved evaluating large doses of LSD on inmates.
Did this continue indefinitely? Was there ever any internal pushback?
There was some. A 1963 CIA Inspector General's report raised serious questions about MKUltra, particularly the use of unwitting Americans in drug tests. It led to a reevaluation.
But did the interest completely disappear?
It's hard to say definitively. A 1975 memo shows they were still discussing the ethics of unwitting testing on U.S. citizens versus needing willing volunteers. There was a freeze put on unwitting testing, but whether that was ever formally lifted or bypassed is, well, less clear from the available documents.
Okay, so documented controversial history. Now let's pivot back to more modern technology. We mentioned EEG earlier. What about combining it with fMRI?
Simultaneous EEG fMRI. That's a powerful research tool. EEG gives you great timing information when brain activity happens. fMRI gives you good location information where it's happening based on blood flow.
So combining them gives a more complete picture.
Exactly. You see the precise timing and location of neural activity during cognitive tasks.
Yeah.
It's fantastic for understanding the brain, but again, it's an observation tool, not primarily a manipulation technique itself.
Got it. What about neurofeedback? That sounds closer to influencing brainwaves.
Neurofeedback is interesting. It uses EEG to monitor your brainwaves in real time, those different frequencies like alpha, beta, theta, and so on, which are linked to different mental states.
Like alpha for relaxation, beta for focus?
Generally, yes. And neurofeedback shows you your own brainwave activity, often via sounds or visuals on a screen.
And the idea is you learn to change the feedback.
Right. You learn to consciously control your brain waves, to some extent maybe increase alpha waves to feel calmer, or beta for better concentration. It's about self-regulation through training.
So it is influencing brain activity, but initiated by the individual themselves.
Primarily, yes. It's used for things like ADHD, sometimes autism spectrum disorder, even enhancing skills like surgery by improving focus. It shows brain activity can be modulated, but typically through conscious effort and learning.
Okay. Now, that contrasts sharply with some applications seen elsewhere, doesn't it? Like the brainwave monitoring in China.
Yes, that's a very different scenario. Reports describe using brainwave sensors in some factories to monitor workers' concentration levels, or even testing devices in schools to track student attention.
That raises immediate ethical flags, I imagine.
Absolutely. Concerns about privacy, worker rights, potential coercion, surveillance. Using neurotechnology not for self-regulation, but for external monitoring and potentially control.
Which taps right back into those public concerns about manipulation we started with.
Exactly. And it highlights how sensitive people perceive brain data to be.
Is there research on how sensitive people consider it?
Yes. A study on U.S. public perceptions found that people generally view things like thoughts in mind, images in mind, even raw brainwaves as highly sensitive information.
More sensitive than other personal data.
Often comparable to, or even more sensitive than, things we usually think of as very private, like social security numbers or detailed health information.
So there's a strong public intuition that brain data is uniquely personal and needs protection.
Definitely. And academics share these concerns, worrying about misuse of data from consumer neurotech devices.
Misuse how?
Things like risks to mental privacy, using brain data to make targeted advertising even more persuasive, or potentially using it for things like insurance risk profiling. The potential for misuse is a growing concern as the tech develops.
This seems to lead into a more strategic, almost weaponized view, the idea of cognitive warfare.
Right. That framework, discussed in security studies, views the brain itself as a potential battlefield.
A battlefield.
The idea is that advanced technologies could potentially be used for hostile neuromodulation, directly influencing an adversary's thoughts, emotions, decision-making.
And this connects back to MKUltra.
Some analyses draw that line, yes. Seeing MKUltra as an early, crude attempt in a long history of interest in influencing the mind for strategic advantage. Now, the potential tools are just far more sophisticated.
What kind of tools or vulnerabilities are discussed?
There's discussion around the brain's potential vulnerability to external signals, RF signals, electromagnetic forces, maybe even more exotic concepts like scalar waves, though those are highly speculative.
And the term neurostrike, what does that refer to?
Neurostrike is conceptualized as the deliberate, maybe covert, use of technology specifically to target and disrupt or degrade an opponent's cognitive functions or neural operations. It's weaponized neuroscience, essentially.
That's a chilling concept.
It is. And the discussion isn't just about hypothetical future tech. They even bring in examples like social media-induced illness.
Like the reports about TikTok potentially triggering inuitic-like behaviors.
Exactly, citing reviews suggesting that even current digital platforms can influence neurological function and behavior in vulnerable individuals. It highlights that the brain is susceptible to external stimuli, even digital ones.
So we have historical programs, developing neurotechnologies, public anxieties, ethical alarms, and even concepts of cognitive warfare. It's quite a landscape.
It really is, and public opinion reflects this complexity. You have skepticism, like we saw in the neuroscience forums.
Right, people questioning the feasibility of remote brain manipulation.
And then you have phenomena like, well, tinfoil hats.
Ah, the classic symbol. People genuinely believing they need to shield themselves from electromagnetic waves or mind control attempts.
Exactly. It's become a cultural shorthand for paranoia, but it stems from a real belief, for some, in external technological threats to the mind.
Wasn't there some actual science that got twisted there? Something about microwaves?
Yes, the microwave auditory effect, or Frey effect, discovered by Alan H. Frey. Certain microwave pulses can induce a perception of sound directly in the head, but Frey noted that wire mesh, not necessarily foil, was effective at blocking it.
So a real phenomenon, but perhaps misinterpreted or exaggerated in the popular imagination.
Often the case. Which brings us to the challenge of evaluating claims in this area, distinguishing plausible concerns from pseudoscience.
How do we do that? What are the hallmarks of pseudoscience often seen here?
Things like relying heavily on anecdotes instead of controlled evidence, collecting evidence selectively to fit the claim, and, crucially, reversing the burden of proof.
Meaning they demand skeptics disprove their claim rather than providing strong evidence for it.
Exactly. Which isn't how science works. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
So pulling all this together, we have documented government interest in mind influence in the past, like MKUltra.
Yes, undeniably. Though using methods now considered unethical and perhaps less sophisticated.
We have ongoing neuroscience research exploring brain function and how to measure or even modulate it, like with neurofeedback or TMS.
Correct. Mostly for research or therapeutic goals, but demonstrating increasing capability.
We have significant public anxiety about manipulation and the sensitivity of brain data.
Fueled perhaps by both the history and the potential of new technologies and ethical concerns about applications like monitoring in China.
And we have skepticism about the current feasibility of widespread, covert brainwave manipulation, alongside concepts like cognitive warfare discussing future possibilities.
It seems the hypothesis of concealed government experiments taps into a confluence of real history, emerging science, public fears, and speculative future threats. Evaluating it requires carefully weighing the documented past against the demonstrable present and plausible future, while being wary of unsubstantiated claims.
It's a complex picture with no easy answers, really. Requires ongoing critical examination.
Absolutely. The history shows interest, the science shows potential, and the ethics demand caution.
This has been a really thorough exploration. Thank you for breaking it down.
Glad to discuss it. It's certainly a fascinating and important area.
Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.